How you going, people? Here we go. Part 4.
Experience have you said the 40-hour CIT, crisis intervention training?
Yes.
From your experience, have you used that on the street?
Yes.
Those techniques that you learned in that crisis intervention training? Was there anything about this call that suggested to you maybe this might be...
Okay, so we're trying to lock him down that you had training. You've used it before. Why didn't you use it this time? Locking you down, building a cage right around you, stick by stick.
a good use of those skills as a crisis intervention officer?
I'd say it doesn't hurt to try.
Did you try?
I did not try. I was not the contact officer, so.
Okay, I was not the contact officer. Remember, he wasn't the contact officer when he said, let's put him on the ground and hold him for the ambulance. He wasn't the contact officer when he says, I'm the only free hands and I'm going to go get the hobble. But now he's a contact officer. He didn't do that. And I don't think the guy's being malicious and he planned all this out that day and how. I just think they're going to turn this around and use it against him.
What, I mean, why does that matter?
I don't have much of a, I guess, because I would like just kind of backtrack a little bit. I don't know what happened prior to it.
Okay.
I guess the only attempt you could say is, just kind of tell him to relax.
Okay, so when a cop said, why does that matter, is where he should have went into contact, cover, who's ever got the primary call. They make decisions. You want to minimize your intrusion. The only time you want to intrude is if you see something that's wrong and you need to correct. And then he should follow up. Well, didn't you think it was wrong that they had all these clues and they put this guy on the ground? So, I mean, again, no matter where you go, I can take it to where I want to go. And if you talk to me, I'm going to lock you down and I'm going to get you making a mistake. That's what the job is of the prosecutor.
Okay. Did you do that?
I did.
Okay. How did he respond to that?
He didn't respond at all.
Okay.
He was still kind of in a manic state, I guess.
It seems you used the word pointless. That what the officers were doing seemed to be pointless.
At that point, it was. We've already spent.
Oh, he's going to lock him down with that word pointless. Oh, what if they were doing things that were pointless? Why didn't you recommend them doing something else?
Several minutes trying to get in the squad car from the driver's side.
Do you know how many minutes you actually were spending by the time you got there? I know you don't know what was happening prior, but when you got there, about how many minutes?
My answer would be, I don't know. I would say more than a couple, probably less than 10 or 15 minutes. But I don't know.
I wasn't counting.
Rough estimate? Did it seem like...
See, he doesn't want to let you off with that. I just answered you, I don't know. Now we want rough estimates. So later I can say, well, you rough estimated here. Now you're saying it's this. That was a pretty rough estimate, wasn't it? It's just going to be used against you.
Several or a couple, or what do you think?
See? Trying to lock him down. That's where the attorney ought to be like, you know what? He just answered that. Move on to what else you think's important.
Maybe a couple minutes, roughly.
Okay.
So the cop did pretty good by saying maybe a couple, roughly. So he left some wiggle room. If you're going to have to answer something you're not sure, at least leave some wiggle room.
What was the purpose of calling for the ambulance?
I felt that that he was likely going to that he was possibly on drugs.
Okay.
Because the way he was acting, erratic behavior.
Oh. So he tried to get him, why did you call the ambulance? Because the cops were beating him up? Because they used too much force? That's what he was hoping for the answer. Well, I thought the officer was being too rough on him, and I knew the way they were treating him that he was going to need medical assistance. That was the answer he wanted.
And we wouldn't be, even if we wanted to transport him, we wouldn't be able to transport him the way he was acting.
Okay, so what was the hope that the ambulance or paramedics could do for you?
At least assess him and figure out what we're going to do from there.
Okay, even though he's struggling with you guys?
Yes.
What could they do to help with a struggling person?
See, he's trying to, this prosecutor, investigator, prosecution team, whatever you want to call him, he's trying to make him look like, look, what you guys were doing was unreasonable. I mean, you called an ambulance because of an uncooperative suspect. Why did you call him that? He wants them to say we called him because he was under the influence and we thought he had excited delirium and he would look like he was having medical issues. Well, didn't he say he couldn't breathe? Maybe that's why you called him. Maybe you knew that he needed medical attention, and instead of kneeling and banging and trying to get him in a car, don't you think medical attention would be more important than what you were trying to do? And if you do think that, why didn't you stop it? Look, man, there ain't no way to go once you start talking.
They can restrain him better.
Better?
Yep.
They can restrain him better. That's not a really good answer. He should have said they have restraints for the gurneys. When they have violent people, they can lock his legs down on the bed. They can lock his arms down. They don't use metal handcuffs that can cause more pain to the suspect. They use Velcro or leather, which is safer for the suspect. So they have much more ability to do that. And because of his actions and because we had to fight with him, he was going to need a medical clearance anyway. So having an ambulance there to help and maybe give him a shot to calm down, maybe if he was overdosing, they could save his life. I was doing this to help him, and that's why I wanted the ambulance there.
Why don't you elaborate on that?
Why don't you elaborate? That's always a bad thing. That means they want you to lock yourself down more.
So instead of being handcuffs, usually when we deal with people that are kind of excited delirium
excited delirium. He used a term that he better know what it means. When you start throwing out words to look cool and you don't know what it means, you can bet your butt somebody's going to ask you, what did you mean by that? He already got called out for using pointless. What do you mean by that?
high on something, and they're out of control. We assist with holding them down, putting them on the ambulance gurney there, and usually what they do is handcuff him, their own handcuffs, and handcuff that person.
Everybody's making notes. Everybody's going to get a copy of this interview. Rick, why are they making notes instead of just listening? Because I can't tell you the number of times that I'm like, you know what? It's being recorded. I won't take notes. And the damn recording broke, or it didn't get it, or it cut out at the critical point that I wanted to hear and I can't make out what he said, or the microphone went out, or some dummy cop went in there and, started looking for his lost donut from last week and he unplugs it accidentally. So you need to have notes as backup.
To the gurney.
Does that help calm people down?
It restrained them until paramedics can kind of assess what they need to go from there.
Okay.
To the gurney.
Does that help calm people down?
I'm not sure what he's asking. Does that help calm down? I missed it.
We assist with holding them down, putting them on the ambulance gurney there, and usually what they do is handcuff him.
He said handcuff. I would have said they would have used softer restraints that didn't damage him like handcuffs, and they have the ability to lock his legs and his arms up and his chest down so he can't bend up and hurt himself and bang his head. So this guy could have explained this a little bit better.
Their own handcuffs and handcuff that person.
Does ambulance carry handcuffs? He said they could put their own handcuffs on him. I didn't know ambulance carried. Maybe they started carrying handcuffs. They never carried handcuffs when I was working.
To the gurney.
Does that help calm people down?
It restrained them until paramedics can kind of assess what they need to go from there.
Okay. You mentioned just a second ago excited delirium. I think you said correct. What is that?
What is that? He knows what it is. They already mentioned it before. They mentioned it in the videos. They've watched the videos. He knows what it is. He's researched it. He's read the I think it's called the white paper or the white papers, the document on excited delirium. He knows exactly what it was. He wants him to explain how well and how familiar, and did he go through the training, and is it within policy, and does he give a bad definition? And if he knows what it is and he thought the guy was suffering from it, why did they leave him on the ground? Why did they kneel on him? Why did they set him down? Isn't that against the... They're locking him down in the cage, stick by stick.
As far as you understand.
I guess it could be a mental health or more than likely drug related, where they go on a high, into like extreme high, and they're acting erratic, they're not making sense, kind of generally, from my experience, sweating profusely.
Okay, so where this You notice the investigators going, keep talking, keep talking, Where he's going to go is, if you were thinking excited delirium and you knew there was a problem and you called an ambulance, why didn't you get him off the ground and get off his neck? If you knew all this and you were so smart and you're so well trained, why didn't you stop them? So he's taken the guy right where he wants him to go. Explain to me how experienced you are. Explain to me how knowledgeable you are about excited. Explain to me all your training. Now explain to me why the hell you didn't do anything.
You're unable to reason with them at all. They don't really have any self-awareness, and potentially very explosive and violent. If a drug's in their system, they could kind of have that superhuman strength. Okay. With if there's drugs in.
Sounds like he's explaining PCP to me.
Could excited delirium also potentially be fatal to a person?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, so you were thinking excited delirium. You called the ambulance and you knew it could be fatal. Why didn't you do anything to stop it?
Where did you learn it? Like, how do you know this about excited delirium?
We learned it through this is part of being licensed. Is, you go through the Minnesota Post Board curriculum there. That's where it initially was taught.
All officers, this would have been my answer. All officers are giving minimal training on it, exposure training to make sure we understand that it could be an issue. None of us are experts on it. We don't have any medical training, but we understand the concept. You want to leave your way. If you try to be too smart and too good, then they'll use it against you.
About that. And then there's further training with MPD.
This, in your understanding of excited delirium, does struggling or fighting with, let's say, officers have any role in exacerbating excited delirium or making that worse? I think.
Oh, so now you're going to get him to agree that he knows fighting makes it worse, and you were fighting, and you were trying to get him in a car when there was no reason to get him in a car, and you didn't try to do anything else, and you laid him down, and you kneeled on him, and you called the ambulance. Why didn't you stop it?
That's kind of out of the scope of knowledge.
Okay.
Oh, okay, hang on. Here's where the attorney kind of jumps in here. He tells him, so I'll play this full through so you can get exactly what he said and why the attorney objected.
Training with MPD.
This, in your understanding of excited delirium, does struggling or fighting with, let's say, officers have any role in exacerbating excited delirium?
So the attorney here picks up, hey, they're trying to lock him down and trying to get him to admit that he knew what he should have done and shouldn't do, and he's an expert, etc. And now it makes him more culpable on why he didn't act. And the attorney picks that up and goes, wait a minute.
Or making that worse?
I think that's kind of out of the scope of knowledge.
Okay.
And you're asking questions like he's a medical doctor.
Well, I think
you have a question about his training.
That is a training question, I would.
Ah. So see, you can say what the training is, but don't have him make an expert opinion like he's an expert.
I would say.
Well, you didn't ask it that way.
In your training on excited delirium.
Good follow-up by this guy. This guy's pretty good. I'd interview with him. I'd be like, you, man, come on, let's go in here. We'll double team this dude. We'll jack up anybody. So this guy's pretty good. He's like, okay, no problem. In your training. And he'll ask him the same damn question.
Have you heard or learned any information about the role a struggle has with excited delirium?
If this guy is smart, this is the only time his lawyer has opened his mouth. His answer should be, and mine would probably be, you know what, I don't recall. I'm not real sure what you're asking. I would make him be more deliberate and give me something that I can get more concrete on, because he's like, in your role, in your training, have you ever been experienced? Because probably in some of the mandatory training, it says people with excited delirium will tend to struggle and fight with police, and it could make the situation worse. Trying to detain him or trying to escalate, you should always try to de-escalate to prevent struggling from enhancing. I haven't even been through the training. I don't know what it all says, but I'm guaranteeing you that's where this guy is going.
I think I've read it before.
Okay. Was there a concern at the scene about excited delirium?
This guy already knows there was. One of the guys mentions it on video, and they've all watched the video. Of course he knows it's there. He just wants this guy to admit that he heard it, he knew it, he was trained in it, and he didn't do anything.
I would say, for me, it was, at the time, it was more like a drug-related, potentially.
Oh, it sounds like he's waffling. Now he's backing away from it. He's going to throw the term out voluntarily, and now he's backing away from it.
Possibly like consuming drugs before like officers.
Okay. Did you hear Officer Lane specifically say he was concerned about excited delirium?
I heard it. It was on the damn video. Everyone heard it who watched the video. And he already got him admitted that he watched all the video. That was earlier. I don't think I played that.
I did not.
Okay.
Oh, man. He said he did not hear that. Hopefully he didn't tell anybody else, or they didn't talk about it on their body camera, and they don't have any. This is where, when you say I did not, I would have preferred him to say, I don't recall, and I don't think I heard anybody mention that as far as I can remember. I would have left some wiggle room there.
Do you think that Mr. Floyd was perhaps having a drug overdose? Is that what you're trying to say?
It's a possibility.
Possibility.
In my mind, it was a possibility.
Does that change in any way the way officers would, in your experience and training, officers would respond to somebody?
No, it doesn't. If he becomes to where he needs medical attention, I call an ambulance. It doesn't change the fact that he's in custody and I have to detain him and I have to restrict his movement and I can't let him fight and hurt himself or hurt other officers. Doesn't change any of that.
I guess it really depends if they have knowledge of it or not.
Okay. What were some of the things that Mr. Floyd was saying when he was on the ground being restrained that you heard?
Now we're going to know what you heard. And now everything you admit you heard, I'm going to get to say when I get you on a stand, you admitted to this, this, and that. Why didn't you stop it?
He was saying that you couldn't breathe, but then he was obviously yelling and talking.
What does that mean?
See, he wants them to say, because the common thing for cops say is, look, if you're yelling and screaming, then you can breathe. If you can't breathe, you can't yell and scream. Now, as a prosecutor, you can turn that around and go, well, if a guy's talking and then suddenly stops talking, wouldn't that be a clue that he probably got some issues? I mean, if a guy's yelling and he stops yelling, wouldn't that be a clue? But I don't know where he's going to go here. We'll see.
Obviously, in school, we're trained like, hey, if a suspect's claiming that they can't breathe, if they're talking, they're breathing. Obviously, you got to be able to breathe in order to say so.
That was good that he said we're trained in that. So now he's following his training and he's making decisions based on his training. That's good.
Okay.
It's no different than I guess being to put somebody and they're exhausted, and we're exhausted, and obviously we're taking a lot of breaths, and it feels like we're not breathing,
Okay.
able to breathe.
From where you were standing, where were other officers positioned on Mr. Floyd?
Believe
That's a pretty broad question. When you say where was I standing, I was standing in several different spots at several different times. What point are you talking about? At one point, I was standing with the officers behind me blocking the crowd. When I showed up, I was walking toward them and standing by the car. At one point, I moved around by the side of the door to help pull them through. What? Be more specific on where I was standing and when.
Chauvin was at the head of the Floyd. I believe Chain was in the middle and torso, and Lane was at the foot.
Did you say Chang?
Oh, excuse me, clarify. King.
Oh, King. Okay. Because Officer Chang is the park officer,
Yeah,
but
correct.
okay.
Do you know the spelling on Officer King's name versus Chang, just so they can understand it?
I believe you already have.
Really, dude? You ain't said nothing, and you want to ask the name of one of the officers that was there. You're telling me that you guys are doing this investigation for over a month with all the rights, and you don't know the PERC officer's proper spelling? What a dumbass question. That freaking no hair gave his brain a cold. He ain't thinking right. Really?
So Chang is C-H-A-N-G,
Yeah.
and Kang is K-U-E-N-G, something like that. That's how I understand it, at least.
Yeah, he's kind of a newer guy. So
Kang and Chang.
I couldn't tell you how to spell it correctly.
But just so it's clear, Officer Chauvin, Officer Kang, and then Officer Lane at the fleet.
Yes.
Did I have that right? Okay.
He knows that's correct. That's why he cleared it up. He gave him the right answer. He knows what he's talking about, and he wants to move on. This follically challenged guy wants to get in the middle of a freaking interview. He wants to ask the proper spelling of a name. How the hell does that help your case? Who is this knucklehead?
Who are you closest to in this kind of chain of or group of officers?
Officer Chauvin.
What did you see Officer Chauvin doing?
He's struggling with the guy because he's kind of moving.
Who are you closer to? I thought he was asking what kind of relationship. He's talking about in relation to where you were standing, who were you closest to? Hell, I went, well, I'm closest to Officer Chauvin's wife. He doesn't know it yet, but me and her's been sleeping together. I'm really closer to her than I am to him. No. Where were you standing closer? Freaking.
A little bit, squirreling around.
Okay.
I think at some point I asked the guy, what do you hunt? Meaning, what drugs are you using? Because I know I am with someone generally
Want to know?
they'd like to know that information. He didn't respond. So.
Okay. How was Officer Chauvin getting control of Mr. Ford?
Oh, did you see him with his knee on his neck? For how long? And why didn't you stop it?
I can't see what he's doing with his arms or anything like that because I'm kind of offset him a little bit. From my first initial view of it, it's kind of his knees are moving depending.
This is where they get to go back because he says I couldn't see, and they're going to play this video frame by frame, and they're going to show different frames to where he had an absolute clear line of sight. And they're going to pop that up on trial in front of the jury and go, you said you couldn't see. If you look at this frame right here, it doesn't look like there's any obstruction, and it actually looks like you're staring right at Officer Chauvin with his knee on his neck. What exactly are you seeing right here in this frame? That's how they're going to get him with. That's why when you talk to government and you give multiple statements, and this is considered multiple statements, because they're going to get a statement now, and they're going to get a statement at every trial they do. So if they charge these other three officers separately, they're going to get 3 different statements on a stand on him later. And if any of them are different from this one, he's going to be in the carpet. And he may be the last one. And then they'll get him won't take the stand on himself, and they'll say, he testified here, and he said this. He testified in the room with his attorney, and he said this. He testified at this officer's trial, and he said this. None of them are the same. Can we really believe this officer? Don't give multiple statements, and don't talk to the government. But Ricky's got his lawyer and his lawyer. Well, I mean, it is what it is.
I'm like the suspect that's moving between the back of the back of the head, neck, shoulder blade.
Which knee?
I believe it's a left knee.
Left knee? Okay. Do you know, have you seen that?
That was a good answer, that it was on his shoulder blade, back of the neck, shoulder, center spine. He's making it sound like I never really saw it exactly right on his neck to where it would do damage.
Or used a maneuver similar to that?
No.
What was
Have you
that?
seen
I believe it's a left knee.
left knee? Okay. Do you know, have you seen that or used a maneuver similar to that?
No.
You've never seen that maneuver? Are you kidding me? Man, I guarantee you they can pull footage of this guy on a scene where a cop had a knee on somebody. He's never seen that maneuver? You've never put your knee on a suspect to gain control of him? There's no way that any officer who's ever fought with anybody can say they've never used their knee to control an officer or a suspect.
Are you trained to handcuff people?
No.
Is that something you have to do a refresh on every year with your use of force
Yes.
Training? Okay. How many different ways are there to handcuff people?
Lots of ways.
Can you think of like 3 off the top of your head that you're probably trained in every year?
This is over, under.
How about the position of the person you're trying to arrest or handcuff?
So see, he didn't really want an answer. He's trying to redirect him to what he's really getting at.
Well, usually you can do as far as practice. They're gonna be standing on their knees and on their stomach.
Prone, I think
Yeah,
they call
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay. And so you've trained in how to handcuff somebody prone. Do you use your knee when you're typically trying to handcuff somebody in a prone position?
I've seen trainers teach use the knee to kind of.
If a trainer's using his knee and he's training, then you're complying with your training, and it must be a standard operating procedure. It must be approved by the department because the department picks the trainers and they approve the curriculum. How the hell can you say that you can't use your knee when this guy just admitted trainers use their knee? But he said he's never seen it before. Really?
Leverage yourself.
Is that how you're trained though? To do a prone handcuffing technique, to use your knee to help handcuff a person?
What do you mean here? Could you elaborate?
Well, are you trained to? Have you been trained by the Minneapolis Police Department to handcuff somebody in a prone position?
Yes.
Do you utilize the knees to effectuate that handcuffing?
I guess there's a specific.
See, this guy doesn't know, and he doesn't want to admit he doesn't know. You know what? I can't remember if they use the knee or not. I've seen other officers do it. I've seen trainers do it. I've never done it, and I can't remember if I was actually trained that way or if I've just seen people. But he's starting to hem and haw, and this is where you can get somebody, you keep pressuring him, and he'll give you an answer that he doesn't know if it's right or not, and now you can prove it was wrong and call him a liar later.
Technique where they teach where you have where you have the person's arms between their knees.
Right. Okay. So was what Officer Chauvin doing similar or different to what you would normally do if you're trying to prone handcuff somebody?
So now he's going to make him a witness against the officer. Isn't it true that you weren't trained to do that, and now when they try to charge Chauvin with doing it wrong and not within policy, they're going to use him to say, see, he received training. He received the same training you did. And then you'll have idiots coming here. They need more training. Okay.
Floyd was already handcuffed, so.
Right. Okay. So that maneuver that you saw Officer Chauvin use, is that something you've been trained in?
I've never used it.
Have you ever seen Officer Chauvin do that before in calls?
Non-responsive. I asked if you ever had it, and you said I've never used it.
Officer Chauvin use, is that something you've been trained in?
Have you been trained in?
I've never used it.
Have you ever
I've never used it. That's non-responsive. I didn't ask you if you ever used it. I asked you if you were trained in it.
seen Officer Chauvin do that before in calls?
I don't recall.
Have you ever done that on a call?
I've never done that.
I can't believe this guy's never used a knee. I mean, he's been a cop for 2 or 3 years. Unless he's just not arresting people, how the hell can you be a cop for 3 years and not use your knee?
Okay. Did you see his knee on Officer? I'm sorry. Did you see Officer Chauvin's knee on Mr. Floyd's neck?
At some point, yes.
At some point. Okay. Was it constantly there, or did it move around, or something else?
From what I can, because I'm majority of my attention is focused on traffic. I'm not always looking down at what they're doing. I'm trusting them to do what they're doing, and they're kind of trusting me to kind of watch their back.
Yeah.
So I'm spending the majority of my time looking out at the traffic and the crowd.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. So you're not constantly
I'm not sitting
watching,
there,
but you are looking back just to make sure everything's
Right.
looking back and forth, it sounds like?
Right.
Okay. The hobble. What was, so the purpose of the hobble was what?
To restrain a person, a fighting person that is in handcuffs.
Okay. And what part of the body are you trying to restrain if you've got him handcuffed?
Generally, their foot to waist.
Okay. Was he somehow using his feet that they needed to be hobbled, in your opinion?
I believe I saw Officer Lane kind of struggle with getting control of.
He used his feet to kick his way out of the car. He used his feet to stop us from being able to bend and get him in the car. And then once he was out of the car, it took 3 officers to hold him down because he kept trying to get up. So yes, his feet were a problem, and if we restrained it, it would prevent him from hurting himself or kicking an officer.
Floyd, at the leg. So And that's why I wanted to get her to prevent either of us getting hurt or Lane getting hurt or getting kicked.
Yeah. Did the hobble ever get applied?
I don't believe so.
Do you know?
I think we kind of forego that because the ambulance started.
Oh, that's right. You did say. I'm sorry. Okay. At some point, did Mr. Floyd kind of stop actively?
This is where they want him to get. Why didn't you give medical aid when he stopped moving? Why didn't you reassess? Why didn't you, when he stopped moving and suddenly was quiet, why didn't you think that was a medical emergency and you take first aid? This is where he's locking him down. This is where he's going. I'm assuming. I don't know. I haven't watched. Oh, shit. I'm at 30 minutes again. Good grief. All right. Hell, we're an hour 10 in the interview, so that means there's 30 minutes interview. All right. We're going to make a part 5, I guess.